Reported crimes against women in India are some of the deadliest and most inhumane. One such horrifying incident involves a young woman named Jyoti Singh, later known as Nirbhaya, whose story shook the conscience of a nation. On that fateful night, Jyoti was out with her male friend in Delhi. As they boarded a private bus, what followed was unimaginable brutality. She was not only beaten and gang-raped by 6 men, she was also subjected to unspeakable violence when a metal rod was forcefully inserted into her body, causing severe damage to her reproductive and internal organs. When questioned by investigators, the perpetrators shockingly justified their actions by claiming that she was not well dressed. Such a response underscores the deep-rooted misogyny and disregard for human dignity that perpetuates these heinous acts. This crime against humanity sparked nationwide outrage, igniting a relentless fight for justice and reform. It served as a turning point in India's ongoing struggle for women's safety, pushing society and lawmakers to confront the urgent need for change. No woman deserves such brutality. Women must be protected at all costs, and crimes like these remind us of the critical importance of ensuring a safer and more just world for everyone. Welcome to Forbidden Passion. I am glad to have you join us on another video. Kindly subscribe, like and share. Let me know where you are watching from. Born on May 10, 1990, Jyoti Singh was the eldest of 3 siblings in a lower middle-class family in Delhi. Her parents, who hailed from Balia district in Uttar Pradesh, had moved to the capital in search of a better future. Her father worked tirelessly, holding multiple jobs to ensure his children could access quality education. Jyoti, a bright and ambitious child, shared her father's dreams of a better life through education. Jyoti's love for learning set her apart from her peers. While her mother managed the household, Jyoti was encouraged to pursue her goals without gender bias, a rare attitude in her community. Her father believed that education was the key to empowerment and poured his resources into nurturing her aspirations. From a young age, Jyoti displayed a sense of determination that would later inspire a nation. After excelling in her school years, Jyoti enrolled in the Sai Institute of Paramedical and Allied Sciences in Dehradun, where she studied physiotherapy. She had recently completed her degree and was waiting to begin an internship at St. Stephen's Hospital in Delhi. Her family hoped her success would uplift their modest circumstances, and Jyoti, too, dreamed of giving back to those who had supported her journey. Jyoti's life was defined by hope and hard work, making the events of December 2012 even more devastating. Her tragic fate contrasted sharply with the promise of her young life, and her story became a symbol of unfulfilled dreams crushed by unspeakable violence. Awindra Pratap Pandey, the male victim in this horrific incident, was a software engineer from Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh. Born into a middle-class family, Awindra's life was marked by a focus on education and ambition, much like Jyoti's. His journey to Delhi was driven by the desire for a better future and the pursuit of professional success. Awindra had settled in Bursarai, a bustling area in South Delhi, close to his workplace. Known for his soft-spoken demeanor and friendly nature, he often visited local cafes and libraries. He found solace in the city's anonymity, carving out a niche for himself in its chaos. Despite his reserved nature, Awindra had a strong sense of justice and a protective instinct, qualities that would come to the forefront on the fateful night of December 16, 2012. His decision to accompany Jyoti on her journey home after a movie would forever alter his life, leaving scars, both physical and emotional, that he would carry with him. Their friendship, though brief, was built on mutual respect and shared aspirations. They were young, hopeful, and determined to create a future that defied societal constraints. The events of that night would not only shatter those dreams, but also redefine their legacies. The evening of December 16, 2012, began like any other for Jyoti Singh and her friend, Awindra Pratap Pandey. The two had spent the day in good spirits, enjoying the recently released film Life of Pi at PVR Select City Walk in Saket, a popular shopping and entertainment district in South Delhi. It was a night of casual fun, and they were looking forward to a simple journey back home. Both were young and full of life, with their future ahead of them. But this ordinary night was destined to turn into one of India's darkest tragedies. After the movie ended, Jyoti and Awindra decided to take an auto rickshaw to Munirka bus stand, which was a common route for commuters heading toward Dwarka, where they both lived. They shared a light conversation during the ride, oblivious to the horrific events that were soon to unfold. At Munirka, a white charter bus pulled up, with a miner among its occupants inviting passengers aboard, claiming it was heading toward their destination, Dwarka. The unsuspecting duo boarded. Little did they know that this decision would lead them into a trap set by 6 men. As the bus drove away from Munirka, the atmosphere shifted. The doors of the bus were locked, and there were only 6 other passengers on board, including the driver. It wasn't long before Awindra began to feel uneasy. The group of men, who had been silently observing the couple, began taunting them. They mocked the pair for being out so late at night, asking what they were doing together. The tension inside the bus thickened, and it was clear that something was about to go terribly wrong. When Awindra raised concerns about the bus taking a different route, the passengers turned hostile, and a scuffle broke out. In an instant, Awindra was overpowered. The men attacked him viciously. Ram Singh, the driver, continued to steer the bus, while his passengers beat Awindra with an iron rod, knocking him unconscious. The brutality was swift and merciless. He was gagged and bound, unable to defend himself. Awindra later testified that the beating was so savage that he couldn't even react, his body giving way to the violent blows. In his stupor, he became a passive observer to what was happening next. Meanwhile, Jyoti, terrified and in shock, was dragged to the back of the bus. The men, driven by a sadistic desire, turned their focus to her. They began to beat her with the same iron rod that had already been used to subdue her friend. As they assaulted her, Jyoti fought back with all her strength, biting and clawing at her attackers in a desperate attempt to defend herself. It was this fierce resistance that would later become a point of pride for her. She did not give up without a fight. The men, however, were relentless. They took turns raping Jyoti, while the driver continued to drive, oblivious to the lives being destroyed behind him. The violence was not just physical. It was also an assault on her dignity and humanity. Medical reports would later reveal the horrific extent of the damage inflicted on her body, serious injuries to her abdomen, intestines, and genitals, likely caused by the blunt force of the iron rod. The brutal sexual assault, combined with the physical torture, left Jyoti gravely injured and at the brink of death. As the ordeal continued, Jyoti's attempts to fight back even in the face of unimaginable suffering were a testament to her strength. According to the police reports, she left bite marks on 3 of the attackers, a small but significant act of defiance. She would not go quietly into the night. But despite her bravery, the situation was dire. After the assault ended, the attackers, in a final act of cruelty, threw Jyoti and Awindra from the moving bus, leaving them on the side of the road like discarded objects. The bus sped off into the darkness, the perpetrators unaware of how much their actions would soon ignite a nationwide outcry. It was around 11 p.m. when a passerby noticed the bloodied, partially clothed victims on the road. Shocked and horrified, the passerby called the Delhi police, who quickly arrived at the scene and transported Jyoti and Awindra to Safdarjung Hospital. By then, Jyoti was barely alive, her body ravaged by both the physical and sexual violence she had endured. She was placed on life support, fighting for her life, but the damage was too severe. The doctors described her condition as critical. Her intestines had been torn apart, her internal injuries catastrophic. Awindra, although suffering from broken limbs, had survived. But the trauma of what he witnessed and the guilt he carried for not being able to protect his friend would haunt him for years. The doctors who attended to her described the extent of her injuries as catastrophic, She was gravely injured internally, with her intestines and genital area severely damaged. Her body had been subjected to prolonged physical and sexual assault, which caused extensive internal bleeding and trauma. The initial medical report revealed that her intestines were torn apart, and there was massive damage to her abdomen. She had suffered severe blunt force trauma, which caused irreparable damage to her organs. She had been brutally raped and assaulted with an iron rod, which caused severe trauma to her reproductive organs and internal structure. In addition to internal injuries, she had multiple bruises, abrasions, and cuts on her body. Her body was battered and swollen from the prolonged physical assault. Despite the severity of her injuries, the doctors at Safdarjung Hospital, led by Dr. Shantanu, did everything they could to stabilize her. They performed a series of surgeries, including attempts to repair her torn intestines and to address the infections and internal bleeding. However, her condition was critical, and she was placed on life support. In the days that followed, Jyoti's condition remained extremely critical. She had to undergo multiple surgeries to treat the internal and external injuries, but the damage was beyond repair. The doctors worked around the clock, but they knew the chances of her surviving were slim. On December 18, 2012, after 2 days of struggle, Jyoti's condition continued to deteriorate. She remained unconscious and was fighting the systemic damage caused by the injuries and the resulting infections. Doctors reported that despite their best efforts, her body was unable to cope with the severity of the trauma. Realizing that Jyoti needed more advanced treatment than what was available at Safdarjung Hospital, the Indian government made arrangements to transfer her to Mount Elizabeth Hospital in Singapore, which was equipped with the necessary resources for critical care. Jyoti was flown to Singapore on December 26, 2012, after her condition was temporarily stabilized. The Indian government, along with the support of the hospital, arranged for her to be airlifted, hoping that the medical team there would be able to provide her with better care.
As we go into the most intense part of this video, kindly like and subscribe to this channel. It gives me motivation to create more videos. If you love this video and wish to see more, kindly subscribe.
In Singapore, doctors continued to work on her treatment, performing further surgeries in an attempt to address her internal injuries. However, despite the intensive medical efforts and the expertise of the doctors in Singapore, Jyoti's condition did not improve. By this point, her body had been subjected to irreparable damage, and her organs began to shut down. She was still fighting, but the chances of survival were very slim. After battling for nearly 2 weeks, Jyoti Singh died on December 29, 2012, at the age of 23. Her death occurred in the early hours of the morning at Mount Elizabeth Hospital in Singapore, after she succumbed to her injuries. The cause of her death was reported as complications resulting from multiple organ failure due to the severity of the physical trauma and infections caused by the brutal assault. Her death sent shockwaves through India and the world. It sparked widespread protests, demands for justice, and calls for stronger laws and measures to protect women from violence. The brutal assault that led to her death became a rallying cry for women's rights activists and led to greater attention being placed on the need to improve women's safety, the judicial process, and the overall societal attitudes toward gender-based violence. The events of December 16, 2012, exposed a side of Delhi that many wished to ignore. For years, the city had been labeled as unsafe for women, with countless stories of harassment, stalking, and abuse circulating in hushed tones. The brutal assault on Jyoti Singh was a grim manifestation of a systemic issue. Public outrage exploded as the horrific details of the crime emerged, shaking the nation to its core. People of all ages took to the streets demanding justice and safer spaces for women, a loud cry against the suffocating reality of gender violence. The media played a pivotal role in bringing the tragedy to light. Jyoti's pseudonyms, such as Nirbhaya and Braveheart, became symbols of resistance and resilience. In living rooms and street corners, her story was recounted with rage and sorrow as her suffering became a mirror reflecting the collective failures of society. But amidst this wave of solidarity, there were dissenting voices, blaming the victim, questioning her choices, and dismissing the larger problem. These divisive reactions underscored the deeply ingrained misogyny that Jyoti's tragedy sought to challenge. The Delhi police, under scrutiny for its perceived failures, scrambled to recover from the public backlash. Questions about their inaction during the carpenter's earlier robbery incident surfaced, pointing to a broader culture of apathy and inefficiency. Several officers faced disciplinary actions, but the damage to the force's reputation was done. This incident became a turning point, forcing authorities to reconsider their approach to crimes against women and the overall state of law enforcement in the capital city. Amid the chaos, Jyoti's parents remained dignified in their grief, their voices emerging as beacons of strength. They rejected narratives that sought to shame their daughter, instead emphasizing her courage and determination to fight her attackers. Their plea for justice resonated with millions, laying the foundation for a movement that would ripple across India, altering perceptions and spurring long-overdue debates on gender equality and justice. The police investigation, spearheaded by Pramod Kumar Kushwaha, became a race against time. The crime's heinousness demanded swift action, and within hours of the attack, the investigators began piecing together the events. Using a combination of CCTV footage, witness testimonies, and evidence recovered from the crime scene, they tracked down the white charter bus used by the perpetrators. The 6 men responsible were apprehended one by one, each revealing chilling details of the crime. The arrest sent shockwaves through the nation. Ram Singh, the bus driver, and his brother Mukesh were among the first to be taken into custody. Both lived in a South Delhi slum, their lives marked by poverty and criminal tendencies. Vinay Sharma, a gym instructor, and Pawan Gupta, a fruit seller, were similarly apprehended, their arrests highlighting how individuals from varying walks of life came together to commit such a vile act. Akshay Thakur, the last adult suspect, was arrested in Bihar, while the youngest perpetrator, a 17-year-old juvenile, was detained at a bus terminal. The juvenile's involvement ignited fierce debates across the nation. Despite his young age, his actions were no less brutal than those of the others, raising questions about the efficacy and morality of juvenile laws. Many argued that his punishment should match the gravity of the crime, challenging India's Juvenile Justice Act. This debate underscored the complexities of balancing rehabilitation and retribution in cases involving young offenders. As the suspects awaited trial, their confessions painted a harrowing picture of the crime. They admitted to planning the attack as a form of fun, demonstrating an appalling lack of remorse. Their statements only deepened public outrage, strengthening the demand for exemplary punishment. For many, this was not just about seeking justice for Jyoti, but about making a powerful statement against gender-based violence in India. The trial of the 6 accused commenced in a specially designated fast-track court in January 2013. Public anger and media scrutiny ensured that the proceedings were expedited, with the prosecution building a strong case against the perpetrators. The testimony of Awindra Pratap Pandey, the male victim, became a crucial piece of evidence. Despite his physical and emotional trauma, Awindra detailed the horrific events of that night, his account leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. The defense attempted to paint the accused in a more sympathetic light, citing their socioeconomic backgrounds and lack of formal education. But these arguments found little favor with the court, given the sheer brutality of the crime. Forensic evidence, including DNA analysis and blood stains recovered from the bus, further solidified the prosecution's case. The medical reports, which detailed the extent of Jyoti's injuries, became a damning testament to the inhumanity of the assault. Amid the legal battles, the courtroom became a space for larger societal discussions. Activists and lawyers used the platform to highlight the systemic failures that allowed such crimes to occur. They argued for stricter laws, improved policing, and a complete overhaul of societal attitudes towards women. The trial was not just about convicting the guilty. It was about forcing a nation to confront its shortcomings. Jyoti's parents attended each hearing, their presence a poignant reminder of what was at stake. They fought not just for their daughter, but for every woman who had suffered silently. Their resilience inspired those around them, turning the trial into a battle for societal change. For them, justice was non-negotiable, and they vowed to see the case through to its rightful conclusion. On September 10, 2013, after months of emotionally charged proceedings, the fast-track court delivered its judgment. The verdict was clear and unequivocal. 4 of the accused, Ram Singh's brother Mukesh, Vinay Sharma, Akshay Thakur, and Pawan Gupta, were found guilty on all counts, including rape, murder, and destruction of evidence. Ram Singh, the alleged ringleader, had died in custody under mysterious circumstances earlier that year, reportedly by suicide, though doubts remained about the true cause of his death. The juvenile, tried under the Juvenile Justice Act, was sentenced to 3 years in a reform facility, the maximum punishment allowed under the law for minors. His relatively lenient sentence reignited the nationwide debate on juvenile justice, with many arguing that the brutality of his crime merited harsher punishment. The demand for amending the law gained traction, culminating in the passing of the Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, which allowed minors aged 16 to 18 to be tried as adults for heinous crimes. The 4 adult convicts received the harshest penalty, death by hanging. Judge Yogesh Khanna, in his ruling, described the case as the rarest of rare, stating that the crime had shocked the collective conscience of the nation. The verdict was met with widespread approval, with many seeing it as a long-overdue acknowledgement of the seriousness of gender-based violence in India. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, cheering and chanting slogans of victory, though the journey for true justice was far from over. The convicts appealed their death sentences, beginning a protracted legal battle that spanned years. India's justice system, though rigorous, is notoriously slow, and the appeals process tested the patience of a nation demanding closure. The case moved through the High Court, the Supreme Court, and repeated mercy petitions to the President of India. In 2017, the Supreme Court upheld the death penalty, reaffirming the trial court's judgment. The bench described the crime as barbaric and inhuman, emphasizing that the punishment must reflect the severity of the act. Despite this, the convicts used every legal recourse available to delay their execution. Public frustration grew as the delays seemed to undermine the promise of swift justice. The final blow came on March 20, 2020, when all 4 convicts were hanged at Delhi's Tihar jail. It was a somber moment, marking the end of a long and arduous fight for justice. Jyoti's parents, though relieved, expressed that no punishment could bring back their daughter. They hoped the execution would serve as a deterrent, preventing future atrocities against women. The legacy of the Nirbhaya case transcended the courtroom. It forced India to confront uncomfortable truths about its culture, governance, and societal attitudes. The case galvanized widespread reforms, beginning with the formation of the Justice Verma Committee, which recommended significant changes to the legal framework surrounding sexual violence. The Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 was enacted in response, introducing stricter punishments for crimes against women, including the death penalty for certain cases of rape. The law also broadened the definition of sexual assault and criminalized stalking and voyeurism, among other offenses. While these changes were hailed as a step forward, activists cautioned that laws alone could not solve the deeper societal issues fueling gender violence. Public discourse shifted, with conversations about consent, patriarchy, and women's safety gaining prominence. Protests, workshops, and awareness campaigns became more frequent, signaling a collective effort to challenge regressive mindsets. Yet, despite these efforts, incidents of sexual violence continued, highlighting the long road ahead. For Jyoti Singh's family, life was forever altered. They channeled their grief into activism, establishing the Nirbhaya Jyoti Trust to support survivors of sexual violence. Through their work, they sought to ensure that no other woman would suffer, as their daughter had. Jyoti's memory became a rallying cry for change, her name synonymous with resilience and courage. The Nirbhaya case remains a watershed moment in India's history. It revealed the cracks in the system, ignited a nationwide movement, and left an indelible mark on the collective psyche. But perhaps its most profound impact was in giving voice to countless women who had suffered in silence, inspiring them to demand justice and reclaim their agency. Jyoti Singh was more than a victim. She was a symbol of hope and change. Her story, though born of tragedy, became a catalyst for transformation, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the fight for justice and equality must endure.
20 मार्च का दिन हमारे निर्भया के नाम, हमारे देश के बच्चियों के नाम, हमारे देश के महिलाओं के नाम, देर से ही सही देश के बच्चियों को इंसाफ मिला.
The 4 convicts in the Nirbhaya gang rape and murder case were hanged to death at 5:30 a.m. in Delhi's Tihar jail on 20th March 2020, 7 years after the gruesome crime took place. Akshay Thakur, Mukesh Singh, Vinay Sharma and Pawan Gupta were the convicts who were awarded the death sentence. 6 were convicted for the brutal gang rape of a 23-year-old medical student on a moving bus on the night of December 16, 2012. Here is a timeline of the case that shook the entire nation. The victim and her male friend boarded a bus from Delhi's Munerka bus stand, and 6 men, including a juvenile, thrashed the male friend and gang raped the victim on the moving bus before throwing them out of the bus. Between December 18th and December 22nd, the Delhi police arrested all the 6 suspects. On December 29th, Nirbhaya succumbed to her internal injuries as a result of the horrific rape. On 11th March 2013, one of the convicts named Ram Singh committed suicide in Tihar jail. On September 1, 2013, one of the convicts who was a juvenile was sent to a correction home for 3 years by the Juvenile Justice Board. On September 13, 2013, a fast-track court awarded the death penalty to the remaining convicts.
हम बहुत खुश हैं इस विषय में कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने हमारी आवाज़ को सुनी, हमारे निर्भया के दर्द को समझा और निर्भया के साथ साथ पूरे देश को न्याय दिया.
The 4 convicts filed multiple petitions in the last few years and months and managed to stall the execution on 3 different occasions.
मुझे ये तकलीफ नहीं कि पोस्टपोन हो गया, मुझे ये तकलीफ है कि उन चारों के वकील एपी सिंह ने मुझे चैलेंज करके कोर्ट में गया है कि ये फांसी अनंत काल तक नहीं होगी. 7 साल पहले हमारे बच्ची के साथ क्राइम हुआ था. बार बार हमारे को उन मुजरिमों को सामने सरकार झुका रही है, कोर्ट झुका रही है.
All the 4 convicts were hanged on 20th March at 5:30 a.m.
फाइनली आज निर्भया को इंसाफ मिला.
Loved what you saw? Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to join our growing community. Your support keeps us creating.